welcome back to another video, and hopefully today I can pass on some information that I find useful. Picture the scene: you're walking into your skills test and your brain's running mad. You've been thinking about flying and all the procedures overnight. You're already in a little bit of a panic, and you've got to now prove to your examiner that you know what you're talking about and that you're capable of flying an aircraft and you know all the theory behind that. So one of the things that I did, I put together a file while I was doing my exams. I've actually cut the file right back to the bare minimum now, otherwise we'll be here for about 4 hours. But this should cover the basics of what you require to show that you actually know how to put together a flight plan and the necessary information. Before we get into that, we'll point you towards the direction of the CAA. On the screen here I've got a list of safety sense leaflets, so I'll put a list link up here. Go to the CAA website and look at safety sense leaflets, and it covers a multitude of information which you guys will find helpful as a student, and even past the days of obtaining your pilot license. Okay, so we'll have a look into this and see what we can help you out with. So in my folder, on the first page, just to remind me to make sure that my current VFR chart is in date. We all know it comes out at the beginning of sort of February, March time every year, but it's just a reminder that I know from the NATS website that I'm actually using the latest edition. You can always check their website on the CAA website for updates in addition. And once we've done our planned route, either the tracks and the waypoints on our chart, we can then look obviously at one of the important things is weather. Before we go there, actually, this book is basically thrown together to remind me of the certain stages that need to be carried out so that you know that you're going to be able to fly, take off, land, etc. And there's a pretty good order to it, because if you don't do it in a certain order, you won't be able to continue on. For example, if you haven't got your weather, then you can't fill in your VFR charts because you don't know how the magnetic heading is going to take into account your track. So we start with the Met Office. Obviously we go to the Met Office General Aviation and we pick up the areas that we're going to be flying within. So this box here, this is the box that I fly within, if you like, the zone within my chart, and it's going to tell us at which altitude the wind direction, the wind speed, and also our freezing points. Well, temperature rather, which will obviously allude to the freezing point. Also with weather, we're going to be looking at our Form 214. So again, we can go onto the Met Office website, download our Form 214, look for the areas that we're going to be flying within, and then the relevant information is within the boxes to tell us what weather information is there, especially our winds. And here we have in this column here our freezing point, so the altitude at which we become freezing, which, as we all know, ice developing on wings is not the best way to go. Also, with our weather, we can look at our Metars and TAFs, remembering that Metar ending in R is a report, so our report lines here for Alderney, and our TAF, which is ending in F, remember that's a forecast, so it's forecasting to be something, and the report is an actual of, which will then tell you which airport or airfield or which area you're looking at, when it's valid for, and weather details, wind details, etc. And obviously whether you've got broken, scattered or poor visibility or CAV OK. Another thing you can also download from, I believe it was the CAA website, you can actually download an abbreviation list. So this list is really good, because when you start reading through all of your Metars and TAFs, you see a lot of things going on here, and your brain is not going to remember all of it from the start. It just won't happen. So here it just gives you a gentle reminder and a help along to remind you that, you know, that this is what the letters mean. Okay. So that's the weather part out of the way, and obviously make sure you've always got the most up-to-date information for the weather for your flights. And obviously on the 214 we've got the days, etc. And when you go onto the Met Office website, it will give you the valid time slots of when it was latest updated. So once you've got the weather, we can then start looking at NOTAMs. We go onto the NATS website. You'll have to sign up for an account. I don't believe it costs anything. So sign up for a free account, go through NOTAMs, and in the NOTAMs you can then put in your departure aerodrome or airport, your destination, even your waypoints, and it will then spill out a list of the NOTAMs, the notice to airmen, so that you know where you can fly, where you can't fly, other things that are going on. Maybe the airport that you're flying to has an issue with the runway that day, or they have maintenance. Maybe they're not accepting calls for basic service or traffic service, and the NOTAMs will give you all of that information. So you've got weather, you've got your NOTAMs. Now that you've got that information and you've also drawn your chart lines, i.e. your plan on your VFR chart, now you can actually start filling in some details, because you can work out your altitude and flight level and your safe altitude, and also your track, because you've drawn all of those items on your VFR chart. And when we start looking at altitude and safe altitude, obviously we're determining the height of obstacles and terrain on the VFR chart, and also take into account our 500 clear regulation or rule, plus 300 foot for masts. Weather, we can now apply weather, because we've been through onto the Metars and TAFs and the Met Office website under General Aviation, and worked out what our wind conditions are going to be, etc., and the weather conditions, and then we can work out our true headings, or rather our headings, our variations, which obviously comes from your charts, and from that we can then use the whiz wheel, which I'll probably cover in another video, of how to work out your ground speed, your distance, and your leg times, and your other details such as fuel remaining after each leg. This VFR chart, I can probably put a copy up. I'll probably take a photo of this, and I find it very helpful. It gives me my from and to, all the information that I require, the important parts of the heading, magnetic heading obviously, and leg time while I'm flying. Then I can put my actual time, my ETAs, etc., of departing and arriving at waypoints. I can work out my fuel, and that includes a diversion of 30 minutes, a 10% contingency, and 45 minutes of holding. In this box here, I've got the list of generally the people that I use or talk to on various services as I'm flying around the UK. And here's a gentle reminder from back in the day, but I still keep it for my turn, time, torque and gross and free DAC checks at waypoints. And when we pass our message, it's our radar or information, call sign, our type, how many people are on board, our from and to locations, our current position, our altitude, and our QNH. And altitude is absolutely pointless without a QNH setting. Where we're routing to, and whether we want a basic or a traffic service, or whether we're going to transit via an overhead, etc. So this is actually really quite useful. So now that we've found out the weather and the NOTAMs, and we've put our VFR together, our VFR plan if you like, then we need to know, can the plane actually do it? So we go into our Pilot Operator's Handbook, which, believe me, you want to go and study one of those before you're trying to do a skills test, because when you get questions on the day about your aircraft that you are flying, you need to know the answers. So some of the items out of the Pilot Operator's Handbook, or the POH as we all call it, this one here is for a Piper PA-28, and it will give you the weight of the aircraft, empty, etc. All this information will be in every single pilot operator's handbook, and also the relevant graphs and certificates, etc., of balance, weight and so forth. So we know how much the plane is going to weigh. So here on this form, by the way, I've actually lacquered all of these, laminated all of these, so that I can actually write on these with a permanent marker, which then easily rubs off, and I can change every time that I go flying. So with this one here, we can do a weight and balance now. So we know how much the basic empty weight is, the weight in pounds, because that is displayed on this gravity schedule. And then we can work out the weights of people that are going to be going into the plane, whether on the front seat or the back seats, and how much fuel we're going to be taking, and then the total weight of the total loaded aeroplane in pounds. Take into account your arm and aft datum and your moments in pounds, and you'll come up to the results, which will then help you for your centre of gravity. So down here, I actually work out the pilot and the passenger weights, convert from stone to kilograms, kilograms to pounds, and that then allows me to enter in the pounds within the weights into the weight column. Remember, pounds, don't start putting other systems in there, because none of your maths will actually work out. If you've got anyone in the rear seats, passenger in the rear seats, or you're carrying baggage in the rear seats, then obviously take that into account as well. Then we can take our fuel into account, 0.72 kilograms per litre in weight, obviously. How many litres we require. Now, we all know how many litres we require because we've worked it out on our flight plan with our durations and distance, etc., with our whiz wheel, and then in here taken into account our diversions, contingency and holding requirements. That is then going to tell us how much fuel we require. We can then work the weight of the fuel out, so that's that little item there, and then all these bits of information can be populated in, again all in pounds. It may be different in your aircraft POH, and then we can take our moments in pounds and we'll divide that by our main weight, our actual weight, if you like, our calculated weight in pounds. So B divided by A will give us our centre of gravity, and in this case, when I last flew, it was 89.56 as a centre of gravity. So we can now go on to our centre of gravity chart for our weight and balance and work out, are we within the envelope of the aircraft capabilities? And in this case, yes we are. Okay, if it's not within the aircraft capability, you don't fly, or you get rid of a passenger, you get rid of weight, you get rid of fuel, whatever the answer may be. Here you can actually go through the, it's not really required as far as I'm concerned, but you can work out all the distance, centre of gravities on separate items such as your fuel, your baggage, what's on the front seat, what's on the rear seat, etc. I've never really dealt into that too much. So now that you've got that information together, we really should start looking at pressure altitude and density altitude. So with the pressure altitude, we need our airport elevation, where I fly from, that's 436 foot or 436 feet. The current QNH, which will obviously be given to you or supplied to you via your flight school or the tower. And to work out the pressure altitude, we can take our standard, our ISA standard of 1013 hectopascals minus the current hectopascals or QNH setting. So 1013 minus the current at 1005, that would be a difference of 8. So it would be 8 multiplied by 30 foot, because we know that there's 30 foot of pressure per hectopascal. So 8 multiplied by 30, we get 240 foot, plus Campbell in this instance 436, which is the airport elevation, which will give us a pressure altitude of 676. And then we'll take into account our factors of safety, which we'll see at the back of this. And the factor of safety in this instance, I've applied 1.33. So we multiply the pressure altitude, multiply the factor of safety, and that will give us our pressure altitude. We can also work out temperature decreases with altitude, and we can also, from that, derive to our density altitude. So now that we've done all that, we have a few little reminders. So here, factor 1.33, so it will remind me to go through this section. And again, you can get this from CAP 1535, CAA or NATs. And the aircraft mass balance and performance, obviously critical. You need to know whether you're going to be flying onto dry grass or wet grass, soft ground or snow. General safety factors multiplied by 1.33. So read through these bits of information that are out there, and your flying school should be able to point you in the correct direction also. Once we've got all the information that we've collated, we can then look in the POH at the landing performance and work out, yes, we might be able to take off, but can we take off and land? Can we land at our destination airfield? So we can take all of our previous calculations and apply them to the graph, work out the current temperature, the pressure altitude. I've actually put in a 5 knots tailwind. Obviously don't land in tailwind, but that'll give me a worst case scenario. And in this instance I'm needing a 780 foot ground roll, and I need 1,360 foot to allow a 50 foot barrier for takeoff roll. And here we have the short field takeoff distance. Again, this is from the POH. So with your calculated numbers, you can run your pressure altitude, your weight, your heading, which in this instance was a 15 knot headwind. We've gone for a 50 foot barrier, and this will then tell us what we actually need to take off, as in distance wise. And we can also work out engine performance, because we know what our temperatures are. We know the main altitude that we're going to be flying at, and in this instance it works back to 75% for cruise power, or engine RPM of 2,560 according to the POH. I don't quite agree with that, because I usually cruise at 2,300 RPM. So carrying on through the book, again, just some reminders going through. So pre-flight checklist. So you've gone through all your planning, you've drawn your waypoints and your tracks, you've worked out your headings, your weather, your NOTAMs, your safe altitudes, your flying altitudes, whether you can actually take off and land on the given runways within your plan. And now it's just a gentle reminder of, let's go through a checklist. Have you got a license and a rating valid, and is it carried? You put it in a folder. Your medical certificate or your declaration, is it valid and carried? Your 90-day rule, especially if you're carrying passengers. You'll learn about that as you go through your exams. Are you currently fit to fly? Are you current to fly? And have you briefed the passengers? Which, in fairness, you're going to do that once you go out to the aeroplane, so you can actually show them how to get in and out of an aircraft, etc., and then go from there with your brief. Going through the relevant paperwork within the office or whatever setup you have where you fly. Go through the paperwork for the aircraft that you're going to take out, and show your examiner that, and in fairness they'll ask you the questions, show the examiner that the aircraft is in an airworthy condition, it has a C of A, a certificate of airworthiness, or a permit to fly, depending on which aircraft you're flying. Make sure the equipment is on board, so we're looking for first aid kits, POVs and PBRs, or the signal sending thing. So hopefully that's going to help some of you guys out to run through your paperwork before you go into a skills test, and it will help you through the exams if you keep collating the information together and revising that information. Remember, I'm not an instructor, I don't claim to be any instructor, I'm just trying to help from my point of view, things that help me, and I'm sure that when you go in for a skills test and your brain is running absolutely wild, that if you've got something like this set up, then it's going to help you on that morning or that afternoon when you go in for that skills test and you're running through the information and you've got the answers actually laid out in front of you, because you've done the revision, you've put the effort in, and your examiner will actually appreciate that. So thanks for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and check the description below, which I will put a number of links into. Okay, thank you.